I wanted to take a minute just to talk about the child tax credit. A lot of people have been like stressed out about it. They think that they're going to end up having to pay all of it back and someone's out to get them. And then there are other people who are really struggling, who really do need this money, and they want to make sure that they're doing it right. So I want to go through a bunch of questions that I've been getting on the channel, kind of give you my 2 cents on it and explain a little bit more of what I think about the child tax credit. The child tax credit really has 2 parts to it. The original $2,000, that's still a thing, by the way. The original $2,000, which is at the $200,000 level, income level, if at $200,000 for singles, $400,000 for married filing jointly. So you can still qualify for that. Then there's this second part to the child tax credit, where it's the new child tax credit or the advanced child tax credit that gets bumped up to either $3,000 or $3,600, depending on the age of your child. But you got to start at the beginning with the child tax credit. What's it all about? Why do we have a child tax credit? Well, it's to basically engineer or socially engineer what people do. And in this case, it's having kids. And if you look at any of the other credits, that's exactly what they try to do. So if you look at like the electric car subsidy, that was like I think it still is $7,500, depending on what car you get. I don't think Tesla doesn't qualify for that anymore. But those subsidies are meant to get you, to incentivize you to buy an electric car. Same thing with the child tax credit. It's to say, hey, if you have children, we will give you a credit for it. Now, of course, you know that kids cost more than $2,000 or even $3,000 or even $3,600. But you get the point. That's what the child tax credit is really all about. That's where it comes from. Now, the advanced child tax credit was part of the American Relief Act, and that's a relief package in order to, again, to help you, to make sure that you're going in the right direction, and in this case, to support your child dependents. Not all dependents, just those that are under the age of 18. Now, last year through the pandemic, we saw stimulus checks, and a lot of these had dependent components to it for the children and also other dependents. And we got a handful of those. This one is specifically for kids. Now, one of the reasons they needed to do it this way, where they needed to send either a monthly check or they broke it up into monthly checks. They could have sent one check, but they decided to break it up into a monthly check. Now, here's why they're doing that. So first, it has to do with the IRS form W-4 or your withholdings. There is no checkbox. There is no line item that says exactly how many kids you have. Now, there's a section to calculate it, but if you're making an adjustment to it, you cannot figure out how many kids somebody has from the IRS form W-4. You might think it by looking at it, but if you use the online estimator and it needs to make an adjustment for you, it might not look like it's calculating exactly on the form it says $2,000. It's not going to tell you exactly put $2,000 or if you have 2 kids, $4,000 and so on. It doesn't work like that. Now, it looks like that at first glance, but it's not how it works. That's why they need to figure another way to do it. That's why they came out with the advanced credit. Now, could they have just given you on your tax return next year? Yeah, but they, like the stimulus checks, they wanted to give you support earlier rather than later. So that's one of the reasons they did it. You know, another one is looking at universal basic income. This is conditioning people for universal basic income. We saw it with the stimulus checks, and now we're seeing it with the advanced child tax credit. I would not be surprised if that is something that we see more of in the future with universal basic income. And I think that's why they're breaking it up monthly, and that's why they want this thing to continue. Now, another thing is looking at opting in versus opting out. Why did they create this system this way with opting in versus opting out? A lot of people are asking me about it. And why is the IRS telling you not to go to the portal? Well, it's quite simple. When we looked at everything that happened through the pandemic, all the systems in our country were basically overloaded. You had unemployment by the states. Those systems were crashing daily. People had super long lines. Everything was messed up. In trying to get the PPP loans or the EIDL grants, all that stuff was so overloaded because everybody was flooding towards it. Well, basically, they couldn't handle it. So they thought, well, we already know what most people have on their 2019 or their 2020 tax returns. So if we just have the people that had updates or changes to their life go into the system, hopefully it won't crash. So that's one of the reasons why they're doing it. Now, as far as paying it back, and a lot of people are really concerned that they're going to have to pay it back. Unfortunately, it might be setting some people up for failure. But the only simple answer to that, which is not the greatest answer, is you have to go back to your IRS Form W-4. You have to look through all of your financial information, make sure that you're doing the right thing. And if you're not, then you might have to pay it back. So a lot of people are like, well, wait a second, like I'm trying to do the best I can. I can't focus on that stuff. I'm just trying to make ends meet. Yeah, I get it. That might be true. That's why they're doing it this way. They're saying, listen, let's just put the money back in your pocket and kick that can on down the road. And that's what's really going to happen for a lot of people. Unfortunately, those most in need, it's going to affect them the most. The only piece of advice I can have on that is go back to your numbers, look at the W-4, make sure your withholdings are correct, and keep watching these videos because I'm doing a lot of the information right here. I've gone through the W-4s, I've gone through the child tax credit, so you can kind of get an idea of whether or not you're actually going to have to pay it back. Now, I can't answer the questions point blank. If you have X amount of income and this many kids, are you going to have to pay it back? I don't know, because maybe your W-4 was completely wrong earlier this year and you're not withholding enough. And if you're not withholding enough and you're getting the child tax credit, yeah, you might have to pay something back. Now, that might look like you're paying back the child tax credit, but really it's just looking at your tax liability overall. So I know that that's not the greatest answer, and I wish there was a better way of doing it. There are calculators out there that can tell you how to qualify, how much you would qualify for, but it's still not going to answer the question of whether or not you're going to have to pay this back. And this isn't something that we've ever seen before. We haven't seen monthly checks go to this many people, this advanced tax credit. So that could possibly set a lot of people who, again, are the most in need. It could possibly set them up for failure. Now, if you don't need this money, I still don't think you should not just opt out of it blindly. I still think you should go back to your numbers, because that's going back to the W-4 to make sure you're withholding the right amount. There's no reason you should get this massive refund at the end of the year. That is your money anyways. It was your money to begin with. You literally just wrote the check to the IRS or through withholdings. You gave the money to the IRS, they're holding on to it and realize, hey, you gave us too much money, here's your refund. I mean, imagine that. Imagine going to the grocery store and paying double for everything and then waiting 12 months and then getting a check in the mail and say, hey, by the way, you overpaid for your groceries. Here's your money back. Well, that's not the way to do it. You don't want to do it that way. You want to be as accurate as possible. And if that means going into the W-4 estimator a few times a year, a few times is worth it rather than being strapped for cash, throwing it on a credit card, accruing interest, and then waiting for the refund to start working that debt off. That's not the way you should be doing it. So educate yourself as much as possible. Try to get ahead of it. I will tell you that the system is super complicated. I do wish that it was simplified. I do wish it was much easier. I do wish there was an easy button that you could just press and make it all work for you. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. And there is a little bit of engineering that's going on. So hopefully this has helped. And I wouldn't get stressed too much about the child tax credit and whether or not you have to pay it back. Just take a deep breath. You'll get through this, go through it, and take the time to go through the W-4, figure out the numbers best that you can, and keep on asking me questions in the comments down below. That is how I make these videos. That is what drives them. So if you're asking me the questions, I will be able to answer them to the best of my ability, and hopefully that gives you more direction. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and leave your comments down at the bottom.